Did you know that over 60% of Brits believe the UK is heading for a major crisis in the next decade? That's right. More than half the population is bracing for a future where the UK could face complete collapse. But what does that really mean? Is it just exaggerated talk? Or are there real underlying reasons why 2025 could be the year everything unravels? Imagine a country where political chaos reigns, the economy is on the brink, and social unrest is an everyday reality. It sounds like a dystopian novel, right? But what if I told you these issues aren't just speculative, they're happening right now, and they could escalate quickly. Brexit, economic turmoil, and rising division are just the beginning. In this video, we'll uncover 10 shocking reasons why 2025 might be the year the UK finally crumbles under its own weight. From the NHS on the verge of collapse to a military force that's no longer a global powerhouse, the cracks in the system are widening. And you won't believe how deep the digital divide has gotten, leaving millions of people behind in a rapidly changing world. But here's the real question. Can the UK survive the storm? Or is it heading toward a point of no return? Stay tuned as we break it all down. You won't want to miss the full story. Trust me. What's coming next is going to blow your mind. Number 1. Political instability. One of the most significant reasons why 2025 could be the year the UK faces a potential collapse is the ongoing political instability. If you think about it, the last decade has been a rollercoaster for British politics. We've witnessed political scandals, leadership changes, and monumental shifts that have left the country's future hanging in the balance. From Brexit to the constant reshuffling of prime ministers, the political landscape has become a battleground of division and confusion. First, let's talk about Brexit. Although it was hailed as a solution to the UK's relationship with Europe, the aftermath has been nothing short of chaotic. The promise of new opportunities has collided with the harsh realities of trade disruptions, supply chain issues, and a sharp decline in the UK's global influence. And let's not forget the ongoing debate over Northern Ireland and Scotland's future within the UK. Questions that have remained unresolved and could eventually lead to further fragmentation. But it doesn't stop there. Political leadership has become more fragile, with frequent changes in the Prime Minister's office. The lack of a stable, long-term government has created an environment where decisions are often short-sighted and reactive, rather than proactive and strategic. Public trust in the political system has eroded significantly, with many people feeling disconnected from the decisions being made in Westminster. So, as we look ahead to 2025, the question becomes, can the UK's political system hold it all together, or will it crumble under the weight of constant instability? With elections and leadership battles on the horizon, 2025 could very well be the year when the country is forced to face the consequences of its political chaos. What do you think? Is the UK headed toward a tipping point, or can it stabilise before it's too late? Number 2. Economic crisis looming. The second major reason why 2025 might mark the year the UK teeters on the edge of collapse is its looming economic crisis. If you've been paying attention, the country's economy has been facing mounting challenges that don't seem to let up. High inflation, soaring living costs, and an ever-increasing public debt are all contributing to an environment of financial instability that's only getting worse. Let's start with inflation. Over the past few years, inflation has skyrocketed, making everyday goods and services more expensive. This has directly impacted the purchasing power of citizens, particularly those in lower income brackets. With wages stagnating and prices rising, people are finding it harder to make ends meet. The impact on middle-class households is particularly concerning, as they've seen their standard of living erode. Then, there's the ongoing cost of living crisis. Whether it's skyrocketing energy bills or the ever-expanding gap between income and housing prices, the economic pressure is undeniable. The UK's energy crisis, in particular, has left families struggling to heat their homes, And with the winter months being harsh, things could get even worse. Businesses, too, are feeling the strain. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, are having a particularly difficult time staying afloat as they face rising costs and shrinking profit margins. But it's not just about today's struggles. Looking ahead, the UK is saddled with an enormous amount of public debt. The question is, how will the government finance all of this? If things continue down this path, the UK could find itself in a full-blown economic collapse, one that could have ripple effects for years to come. The question remains, how long can the UK sustain this unsustainable trajectory before it reaches a breaking point? Will 2025 be the year the economic bubble finally bursts? Number 3. Growing social division. A third critical reason why 2025 could be the year the UK faces collapse is the growing social division that has taken hold across the nation. Over the past decade, the UK has witnessed a sharp rise in polarisation, both in terms of politics and social values. The issue is no longer just about differing opinions. It's about a deepening divide that affects communities, workplaces, and even families. First, let's look at wealth inequality. The gap between the rich and poor in the UK has been steadily widening, and this disparity is at the root of much of the discontent. As housing prices soar and wages stagnate, many working-class families feel increasingly disconnected from the elite. This wealth divide breeds frustration and fuels anger. And when large sections of the population feel left behind by economic growth, they begin to lose faith in the system as a whole. Then there's the political divide. Brexit alone was enough to split the nation down the middle, but what's followed has only deepened those rifts. From debates over immigration to shifting cultural values, it seems like the UK is caught in an ideological tug-of-war, with each side unwilling to listen or compromise. This lack of unity in addressing the country's problems makes it increasingly difficult for the government to implement policies that benefit everyone. Social unrest has become more common, with protests, strikes, and demonstrations frequently making headlines. These movements often reflect a feeling of disenfranchisement among the public, where people feel that their voices aren't being heard and that the system is failing them. If this trend continues, the UK could face widespread instability. Social cohesion is vital for a nation's survival, and if divisions continue to grow, they could lead to a fractured society, one that's too divided to function effectively. The question is, can the UK heal its wounds before they become irreparable? Number 4. Global shifts and Brexit fallout. A fourth reason 2025 could signal the collapse of the UK is the long-lasting impact of Brexit, compounded by ongoing global shifts. While the UK's exit from the EU was seen by some as a step toward reclaiming independence, the fallout from this decision is proving to be more complex and damaging than many anticipated. As the world around the UK changes, it's becoming increasingly clear that Brexit may have left the country in a more vulnerable position than ever before. One of the primary issues Brexit caused was the disruption of established trade relationships. The UK's departure from the EU created a massive economic rift, complicating everything from import-export tariffs to labour shortages. The once seamless trade flow with European nations has now been replaced with bureaucratic hurdles and red tape. Businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, have struggled to navigate the new system, resulting in higher costs and delays. This disruption has undermined economic stability and led to uncertainty about the UK's future standing in global trade. But it's not just the economic fallout that's concerning. Brexit has also significantly impacted the UK's global influence. As the EU continues to strengthen its own political and economic position, the UK's seat at the table has diminished. With the rise of China, the shifting dynamics of the US, and the growing importance of emerging markets, the UK risks being left behind in an increasingly multipolar world. In the face of these global shifts, the UK must reassess its place on the world stage or risk losing relevance entirely. Brexit was meant to give the UK more control, but in reality, is left the country grappling with deeper challenges. As 2025 approaches, the unresolved issues from Brexit, coupled with the evolving global landscape, could push the UK closer to collapse if it fails to adapt quickly enough. Number 5. Energy crisis and climate challenges. Another reason 2025 could be the year the UK faces collapse is the escalating energy crisis and the broader challenges posed by climate change. These two interconnected issues are already straining the country's infrastructure, and with no clear solution in sight, the future looks uncertain. If not addressed swiftly and effectively, the UK's energy crisis could have a ripple effect on everything from the economy to public health and social stability. First, let's talk about the energy crisis. The UK has long relied on fossil fuels, but as global concerns about climate change intensify, the pressure to transition to renewable energy sources has never been higher. However, the shift to renewable energy has been slow, and the country is still heavily dependent on imported energy, particularly natural gas. Rising energy prices, partly driven by geopolitical tensions, have already made it difficult for businesses and households to keep up with soaring costs. Energy bills have become a significant burden for many, with some families even forced to choose between heating their homes and putting food on the table. But it's not just the price of energy that's concerning. Climate change itself is already having a direct impact. Extreme weather events such as floods, storms, and heat waves are becoming more frequent and severe. The UK's infrastructure, designed for a more stable climate, is struggling to cope with these changing conditions. Roads, railways, and power grids are increasingly vulnerable to disruption, and the costs of rebuilding and maintaining these systems are escalating. As the UK grapples with both the immediate effects of the energy crisis and the long-term consequences of climate change, it risks falling behind in the global race for sustainability. Without urgent action to address both energy and climate issues, 2025 could be the year when the UK's resilience is tested to its breaking point. Number 6. Strains on the NHS. A critical factor contributing to the potential collapse of the UK in 2025 is the mounting strain on the National Health Service, NHS. For decades, the NHS has been a cornerstone of British life, offering universal healthcare to all citizens. However, the system is now under immense pressure, and unless significant reforms are made, the future of the NHS, and by extension, the well-being of the nation, could be at serious risk. One of the most pressing issues is the NHS's staffing crisis. The health service is facing a severe shortage of doctors, nurses, and other essential staff, with many workers leaving, due to burnout, low pay, and poor working conditions. According to recent reports, the UK is struggling to meet the demand for healthcare services, leading to longer wait times and delayed treatments. For patients, this often means not receiving care in a timely manner, leading to worsened health outcomes and frustration with the system. Furthermore, funding has become a significant challenge. Despite repeated promises to increase NHS funding, the reality is that the system continues to face chronic underinvestment. While the UK spends a significant portion of its GDP on healthcare, it remains less than many other developed nations in terms of quality and efficiency. As demand for healthcare services continues to rise, especially with an ageing population, the NHS simply doesn't have the resources to keep up. The rising pressures on the NHS aren't just a medical issue. They are a social issue that impacts the overall stability of the country. If the NHS fails to provide adequate care, it could lead to widespread public unrest, erode trust in the government, and fuel further division within society. In 2025, the question remains, can the UK address these deep-rooted issues within the NHS, or will the system collapse under the weight of its challenges? The answer could determine the nation's future. Number 7. Decline in trust in institutions. A significant threat to the stability of the UK in 2025 is the continuing decline in trust in its key institutions. Trust is the bedrock of any functioning society, and once it begins to erode, the consequences can be far-reaching. In the UK, distrust in institutions like the government, the police, and even the media is on the rise, and this growing disillusionment could have a profound impact on national unity and social cohesion. Take the government, for instance. In recent years, political scandals, broken promises, and controversial policies have left many citizens feeling disconnected from their elected officials. The failure to adequately address issues like housing, healthcare, and poverty has fueled frustration, leading to a loss of confidence in the government's ability to effectively lead. This is particularly evident in younger generations, who feel that the system is rigged against them and that their concerns are ignored by those in power. Similarly, the police have faced increasing scrutiny, particularly in the wake of high-profile cases involving misconduct or abuse of power. Public trust in law enforcement has been shaken, as citizens question the fairness and accountability of the justice system. This distrust only deepens when it feels like the authorities are not taking the concerns of the public seriously, leading to an atmosphere of tension and division. The media, too, has seen its credibility suffer. Accusations of bias, misinformation, and sensationalism have made it harder for the public to know what to believe, further eroding trust in the information they receive. In an era where people feel increasingly disconnected from the truth, the foundation of informed decision-making is crumbling. If trust continues to decline, the fabric of UK society could unravel. Without faith in its institutions, the public may struggle to come together to address the country's pressing challenges, pushing the UK closer to collapse. Number 8. Migration and demographic shifts. One of the more complex reasons why 2025 could bring the UK closer to collapse is the increasing pressure from immigration and demographic shifts. While the UK has long been a destination for migrants seeking better opportunities, the social, economic, and political impacts of this migration are becoming harder to ignore. These shifts are reshaping the country in ways that could have profound long-term consequences. And in 2025, these pressures may reach a breaking point. First, let's consider the ageing population. The UK, like many developed nations, is experiencing a demographic shift towards an older population. As life expectancy increases and birth rates decline, there is a growing strain on the healthcare system, pension systems, and social care services. An ageing population requires more resources, but with fewer people in the workforce to pay for these services, the financial burden becomes unsustainable. Without a steady influx of young workers to support the economy and healthcare, the country risks facing a severe economic slowdown and rising social tensions. This is where immigration plays a key role. The UK needs immigrants to fill gaps in the labour market, particularly in sectors like healthcare, construction, and agriculture. However, immigration has also been a contentious issue, with debates about the strain on public services, housing, and jobs. Some communities feel overwhelmed by the rapid increase in population, leading to growing resentment and a sense of cultural displacement. The rise of populist and nationalist movements in response to these concerns has further polarised the nation, fueling division and unrest. The challenge for the UK will be how to manage this demographic shift in a way that promotes integration and social cohesion while balancing the needs of its citizens. If these issues are not addressed effectively, the UK could face further fragmentation, creating a divided society struggling to hold together. Number 9. Declining military power. The decline in the UK's military power is another key reason why 2025 could be the year the country faces collapse. Once a global superpower with one of the strongest military forces in the world, the UK's military capabilities are now waning. As global tensions rise and geopolitical threats intensify, this decline in military strength could leave the UK vulnerable to external and internal threats, further destabilising the nation. A major issue is the reduction in defence spending. Over the past decade, the UK has cut back on its military budget, focusing instead on domestic concerns and austerity measures. These cuts have resulted in a smaller less capable military that is ill-prepared to respond to the complexities of modern warfare. The UK's armed forces are now stretched thin, with fewer troops, outdated equipment, and limited resources. While the government has made efforts to modernise the military, the pace of these changes hasn't kept up with the growing global threats facing the nation. Additionally, the UK's role on the global stage is shifting. Once an essential member of NATO and a key player in global security, the UK is now grappling with the consequences of Brexit. The country's exit from the European Union has led to a reduction in its influence within European defence matters, which leaves the UK more reliant on alliances outside of Europe. This diminished military presence could weaken the UK's strategic position in global conflicts, making it more vulnerable to external aggression or political pressure from rising powers like China and Russia. The declining military power of the UK could also have a psychological effect on the population. National security is crucial to maintaining a sense of stability, and as military capabilities decrease, fear and uncertainty about the future could grow. Without a strong defence force, the UK risks further instability in an increasingly volatile world. Number 10. The digital divide. The final reason 2025 could be a turning point for the UK is the growing digital divide. As technology evolves at a breakneck pace, the gap between those who have access to the digital world and those who don't is becoming more pronounced. This divide isn't just about access to the internet. It's about the ability to thrive in an increasingly digital economy, and it's putting the UK's social and economic stability at risk. On one hand, the UK has made significant strides in digital technology, with sectors like fintech, AI, and digital services leading the way in innovation. However, not everyone is benefiting equally from this digital transformation. Many areas, particularly rural or economically disadvantaged regions, still face issues with limited internet access and outdated infrastructure. This digital inequality prevents large sections of the population from participating fully in the modern economy, leaving them behind in terms of job opportunities, education, and access to vital services. The implications of this divide are vast. As automation and AI become more prevalent, many traditional jobs are being replaced, and those without the necessary digital skills are at risk of being left out of the workforce entirely. This shift creates a two-tier society, one that adapts and thrives in the digital world, and another that struggles to survive, leading to increased inequality and social unrest. Furthermore, the digital divide also affects access to essential services. Online banking, government services, and even healthcare are increasingly moving online. For those without digital access, this can feel like being excluded from the basics of modern life. If these disparities continue to widen, the social cohesion that holds the country together could begin to crumble. In 2025, the digital divide could push the UK to a breaking point. If the nation doesn't act swiftly to bridge this gap, it risks creating a fragmented society with severe economic and social consequences. So there you have it. 10 reasons why 2025 could be the year the UK faces a massive collapse. From the political instability shaking the foundations of the government to the worsening economic crisis and the ongoing challenges of climate change, the UK's future is far from certain. If these issues continue to spiral, we could see the country unravel in ways we never imagined. But here's the thing. The future is never set in stone. It's up to the people of the UK and the world to make decisions that will shape what's to come. Whether or not the UK collapses in 2025 is still in the hands of policymakers, business leaders, and everyday citizens. But if the country doesn't address these issues head-on, things could get a whole lot worse. We put a ton of effort into creating videos like this to bring you the most important, thought-provoking content. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. And hey, drop a comment and let us know your opinion. Your voice matters.